That's a good segue to bridge into, you know, some of the coaches were bringing their kids around, okay, and myself included. You know, it started actually with Dobe. Sandy, Rock, and Mike were you know, like our ball kids and managers. In addition to our younger kids, which was a tradition at Chaney. But you know, then my kids got involved. My son more than my daughter, and I believe my son seeing, you know, Doc, you know, on our sideline led to him being an orthopedic surgeon today.
Yeah.
And you know, Pope's kids, Michael, are that go back even further. Dope's kids, Mike's a principal, and
Yeah.
Rock's a coach at having a whole bunch of success this year, especially. And Sandy,
They're all involved in athletics. Sandy's at the collegiate level, administratively. Rock and Mike coached at Massillon with Shep,
yes,
then blazed their own path. Mike was a head coach in baseball, and is an administrator now. Rock's up at Conneaut, you know, doing well. So, to your point, they're all involved.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Pope's kids, Michael got an engineering degree and got out and went into teaching, and he's been a coach at Boardman.
Yep.
And I'm sure he'll be a head coach someday. And Danny is physical trainer.
But is now teaching.
Yeah, he's got a PT.
Yeah, but he's now teaching. He's doing like career tech up in Cleveland area. He's teaching and coaching. Yeah,
I think he actually worked for Mount for a year.
There you go. I think if I remember correctly, we went undefeated in 2000. I think that crew, the Ball Boys, I think they went undefeated in like 2000 to 2003 in their little halftime games. I don't think anybody beat them.
Yeah, I just remember, I think it was Mike or Danny kicking the back of my seat coming home from a scrimmage, and we didn't. I don't think we did real well in the scrimmage, and I almost lost it on them. But, it was like dripping water. I mean, anyway. But yeah, and then, you know, certainly when you're talking about staff, when you're talking about support, you got to remember Joe Wilson. Joe Sr., who was, you know, just a tremendous asset to our program in everything he did and gave. And then passed the torch to his son Joe, who was staff. I mean, he was equipment, but he was staff.
Hey, bud.
Yeah.
You know, and he'd be there every time we'd take a long trip or a bus tour, or, you know, go down Canton. He'd have the Joe Senior. He'd have the sub sandwiches wrapped up.
He'd come at 4:00 in the morning to the golf outing and cook. He was just phenomenal.
Joe Wilson, I came to appreciate. Joe Will was one of my favorite guys because he was like the straight man, and maybe he wasn't joking, I don't know, but he would mess with Guarneri so bad, and it probably didn't like him, I don't know, or maybe he did, but it was just I would laugh so hard at some of the stunts that he would pull, and he'd be out there, and every once in a while he'd pull a special day and bring some of the all sport out and put on the back of the golf cart, and yeah.
Joe was very protective, and I think it runs back from his younger brother Michael, who was tragically we lost him to an accident when he was actually a player, but prior to that he was one of our managers, and then that was a really a sad moment for our program, and I think Joe became protective of all the coaches when after that. But yeah, my getting back to support, Miner and Carol Smith, the two Smith twins, who we lost both of them. They were very involved. Nancy Miller, Bill's mom, was very involved in the club. The West Side Merchants were such a big help in all that they did for us, and certainly one of the guys who started as a parent involved in the Gridiron Club when his kids played, and then just stayed around, Ray Jaminet.
Yeah.
And and Ray and I were raising money for the program, taking sausage off the back of a refrigerated truck and dishing it out to the kids, or to go out and sell. And yeah, Ray Jaminet was a big part of the success that we had, and I miss him. I miss him a lot. But yeah, you got coaches, you got managers, you got support people, and that's all part of what translates to I think a solid program.
It's funny you say that, and you started with it earlier. You share all that success, right? Coaches, support, managers, and then you take all the losses, right? You shine and I mean this like this is how it should be. You shine everybody else up, but then you take the burden of not.
Yeah, it's like, and this more. It's like being a parent. I mean, that's how it is, and goes with the territory.
How was Mr. Jaminet? I played against baseball against those guys growing up at Mill Creek, and ironically coached Charlie, not position wise, but was on staff when he came through. And I remember him being a terror down at Mill Creek. But how long was Mr. Jaminet involved? Because I know they had a wide range of ages.
Yeah, I want to say Nick, the first was like 95.
Yeah, it would have been my age. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's when he kind of started getting involved.
I'll tell you, I remember the day that I met Ray. I went down to watch a youth game on a Sunday down at Kirkmere School. Mm-hmm, they have a field back there, and he walked up to me and introduced himself, and got involved with the Gridiron Club. So from 95 to
when you left.
Yeah, it would have been 2006.
Yeah. Yeah, that's and you think about it, like, to have somebody in your position that you can count on to kind of do some of those things and not have to worry about it.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
at the end of the day, right, you gotta, how do you bring coaches in? How do you keep coaches? And it's the cause, it's the mission, it's the connection. But you also got to treat them good.
Yeah.
Gear and all that stuff that nobody thinks about that you attract and keep people to be with you.
Yeah, and you can't discount that a big part of coaching today, anyway, is fundraising. Mm-hmm. I mean, fortunately, and that's why I would work with Ray and whoever else was the president of the boosters and run the golf outing and whatever else that we were pushing on the kids, the poster sales and whatnot. And, it's a pain, but it's essential. I mean, to give you those extras, whether it's feeding the kids during doubles, whether it's spaghetti dinners, whether it's, like you said, gear, coaching projectors and different type of scouting equipment, extra coaches, plus we were generating money to give scholarship. So, yeah, I don't think enough is said about that. Now, I believe there's some coaches that don't even get involved in any of that.
Yeah.
Okay, say, you know what, but I think if you want the extras and you want the things that are going to make your program better, then you need to.
Yeah, and I think that was always one of the things that impressed me was, coming from Ursuline, and then seeing who was it, Fred. They cooked. They brought the food truck every.
Fred Royer.
Yes.
Fred Royer.
They every day during doubles, kids come up, they get their lunch, go in, eat. That. I mean, that's a huge deal.
Yeah. No, he gave us a great price, but it cost us.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm glad you said Fred, because if I didn't mention Fred Ludwig as our film guy, what he gave to the program and what he did. I mean, I never had to worry about that end of it. I mean, whether it be filming a practice or whatever, Fred was either there or sending somebody.
Yeah, and so he would film the games, or one of his guys would film the games, and then they'd bring you the copy, and we'd make the copy of the game, and then he would do the highlight films later on.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, he would do it. He did them all. He always did the.
I remember two things. I remember they were good highlight films, and I also remember you chasing him for it. Come the. It was always like panic. Is Fred gonna be in Florida, or is the highlight film gonna be there at the banquet?
Your Uncle Pat. I'd always call your Uncle Pat and say, "What's going on?" I said, I can't get a hold of Fred, and he'd laugh like heck, and he'd say, "Well, he's probably on his way to Florida." He says, because he's not good with deadlines, and but he'd always come through.
He always did.
He'd always come through, whether it was the midnight hour or whatever. But
I remember he'd always give us some of the newer technology that was out, whether it was like those VHS, the mini DVs or DVDs. He took care of us on.
Yeah, we started there. Two things. We started in the, I want to say, late 80s, going, and I've mentioned this, I know, in one of the podcasts, that we'd go to his studio
Yeah.
out in Poland, and make training films.
Yeah.
And he would accommodate us and give us pizza, and it was all good. And the other thing that when he would film some practices and even a couple scrimmages, that tower is still at Chaney that
Oh, yeah.
that we didn't use the last couple of years, but we built that tower with boosters. Butch Frank and was real involved. His son Brian was playing, and Chris played. Both great players for us, and Paul Lamongi's father, and Pat.
I can't help you on that one.
Yeah. And Murphy, Pat Murphy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He Butch was the carpenter, and we went up on ladders and we built that tower, and it's still standing.
Well, you think about it. They did a great job, because how many times has a moat pit been dug out from in between those telephone poles for the Olympics? We're doing tug of war and filled up with water.
Yeah.
The fact that it's still standing
absolutely
is impressive.
And talk about Barry and your gridiron club. When we first started making the playoffs, we'd go down to Arco Field to practice when the time changed.
Yes.
So we'd go and practice down there. So what did Ray and the group do? They had poles set up on the upper field and had lights put up.
Wow.
To the chagrin of the neighbors, because we actually used them to start doubles like at 5 o'clock in the morning a couple times.
Oh God.
But,
I think that's the beauty of it, right? The community. The community of what do you need? What can I do? They hear the need, and then somehow or another they chip in.
And that's what they're missing right now. That's what those kids are playing their tail off over there, and the alumni needs to come out of the woodwork and support them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what. It's hard for them to embrace the tradition if the tradition doesn't embrace them. And I'm not on a soapbox and chastising alumni. I mean, everybody has their own reasons for whatever they do. But I know there for a fact there is no booster club.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have, and that's on the parents. The parents need to step up, and maybe if they did, some of these people, some of the alums would. I mean, look at the turnout that we had. I mean, I think there's people that want to get involved.
Yeah, I think, and I definitely don't want to speak out of turn on this, but I think just naturally, you leaving, a different coach, there being a pause, a number of years
Right.
where there was no football, there was nothing. I mean, I agree with you. I think there is a lot of people my age, your age, that have that nostalgia feel that if there was an opportunity, they'd be involved. We put out this alumni game for a week, and we have 30 people there. To your point, what's the opportunity? And maybe it's somebody just creating an opportunity and getting 5-10 people to get involved.
Yeah.
I think that pause probably hurt a lot.
I think so too. I think you're on the money with that. The pause and the turnover, the change that occurred. I mean, you had. I got out in '06, and then there was 2 coaches after that, Protopapa and Vivo. And and Jimmy would, who had great success as a coach and as a player at Chaney, was an administrator at the time, and
Well, I think how many years was he there? Then it was a short time before they closed. Like it was only
yeah, it
2.
was 1 year.
Oh well, then yeah.
Yeah, I think Protopapa was 2, and
Okay.
Jimmy was 1, and
So even at that point,
and then they
it's-
closed for 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so you got an 11-year span where, nobody is waking up the echo, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's hopefully I know you've had the opportunity to talk to Coach now. Hopefully, maybe there's a connection made, and he's in the thick of it, so he's not thinking about fundraising right now. But hopefully, at some point, maybe that's facilitated with boosters, Hall of Fame, all those things.
Yeah,
That
yeah, I agree. I think there's a great opportunity for tie-in with all that.
couple things I wanted to ask you about staff. So, and maybe just some quick answers on this. What did you look for in a staff member? So when you're looking to hire somebody, what did you look for?
A solid foundation as far as their grasp of the game, not a particular offense or defense, but their grasp of the game and of technique. So, and did they aspire to want to have their own program? I think that was important to know, not as a deterrent as far as, well, I'm going to hire this guy and in 2 years he's going to leave. I think it's a positive. I think that they should be hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And first and foremost, I think loyalty. Are you going to be loyal to the program? You're going to be loyal to the staff.
Loaded question. How do you find that out in an interview?
Well, I think you
Or maybe you weren't interviewing these guys if they are former players, former attachment to the program.
Oh, yeah, no. The guys that wanted to help.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there wasn't much interviewing going on.
Yeah.
Okay, it was pretty much okay. I know what you can bring to the table. Here's what I have available. Come on aboard.
Okay.
Okay, but the guys that were coming in for position, yeah, I definitely want to know. Well, what do you know about this?
Yeah.
If I'm interviewing you as an offensive line coach, tell me what your experience is.
Yeah.
And, it might be, well, I was a player. I was an offensive lineman, and that's it. Well, depending on what the circumstances is, maybe that would have been enough at the time. Or certainly would help. Have you done any coaching at all? And so I think it's different strokes.
Right. So let me ask you this: how did you handle volunteers? So, guys that just want to come around. Hey, coach, I want to come in. I want to coach. You don't have anything to pay. How do you handle those guys?
I think invariably it would evolve into, I'll see what I can do about getting you something from the club.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how much, and most of the time the guys that I brought in would say, well, I'm not worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
They started as volunteers, okay? And if a guy started as a volunteer, I mean, there's no better show of loyalty than that, you know? I mean, hey,
Right.
you know, I'm doing this because I want to, not how much I can make or, you know, how I'm going to be compensated. I just want to be part of it. But the actual paid position, you know, the guy would know this coming in, okay? So, I mean, he'd know that he's asking me for a position
Right.
that he's going to get a stipend for.
Right, and I guess the thing with volunteers was sometimes they're a blessing and sometimes
Yeah, right.
they're not.
Yeah, and I could think of probably the same instance that we're thinking of, but
Actually, I don't have any. I'm just thinking from because you know, I guess the point is in everybody wants to be a coach on Friday night. Everybody wants a whistle.
yeah,
Everybody
yeah,
wants a
and
gear.
I used to tell
Everybody
you
wants
that
a
everybody
hat.
wants to put a whistle around their neck
Yeah.
and call themselves coach.
But that's not where it happens.
No. Are you willing to meet a lot?
Yeah, right.
Are you willing to watch film till you're blind?
Yeah.
You know, are you willing to go through real doubles? I mean, where you're going to be on the field 6-7 hours,
Real doubles, yeah. Yeah, right.
and are you going to be thin-skinned and I think if I did anything, I don't think that I ever really chastised anybody, you know, browbeat anybody in front of the kids. If I had a suggestion to make on what someone was doing, or if I thought somebody was doing something that wasn't quite right, I'd pull them over to the side and say, you know, I mean, I would certainly never overcoach somebody in front of the kids.
No. I think for me it was what would you say that you knew? It was something like, "Hey coach, is that gap step good?" "Hey coach, are we getting?" As soon as you called one of your coaches coach, the ears perked up and you're like, "Oh boy, here comes a licking."
Yeah.
But it needed to be. But to your point, right? It was never like embarrassing, but it, you know, you got your point across.
Yeah.
We gotta get better.
Yeah, well, I think that like anything, that's a technique that you kind of absorb or whatever, and yeah. But I was very, and I'm not saying, you know, Ed never did that to me, you know. So I and I know some coaches would you know, like I could remember when I was a GA up in Syracuse, and Coach Maloney would be on the phones to the upstairs guys, and he'd get in a crouch position where kids couldn't hear him or something. He'd say, "Well, what are you geniuses going to call now?" But yeah, so
Well, and I think you know, I just remember when I came on staff. I mean, Pope, Miller, Mick, Jerio, Vivacqua. I was surrounded by such good guys. Like, if you were not on point, you looked bad. Just not because anybody made you look bad, just because everybody else was so good.
yeah.
And like that was you know, that's one of those positive peer pressure things. Like, hey, if you want to do this and you want to be around here, you better step your game up, because this is just the level that we're at.
Yeah.
And you know, I remember like I started coaching freshmen. Was that something that you tried to do, was kind of integrate people into the program? And
I think it just worked out that way. It's where the spots were, okay? But, you know, that's the natural flow of things. I think it's important to know that that the staff knows that we're all in this together, okay? That, believe me, the winning part is easy. I mean, because everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to be a winner.
Yeah.
But knowing that you and Pope and Mick and Mills and Sip and the rest of the coaches have your back when we lose, and that's I never ever felt the burden of a loss as being on my shoulders. I always felt that it was distributed and received by the group.
I have, and that's one of the things that I've taken with me even professionally now. I can remember hearing other staffs, right? Like as you're coaching and you go to different things and you talk to different guys and you go to different events, it was always like an offense versus defense. Well, if you lost, the defense didn't stop them. If you kept the team to 10 points, well, the offense has got to put up 14. Like there was a divide even within the coach's office, in the locker room, of the offense needs to do their job, defense needs to do their job. Like I never, not one time, we would joke. Hey, Pope, you got to stop the curl. Hey, Ron, I'd like to see a series instead of, but there was never any of that. Yeah. And I felt like I never heard that at Ursuline, and I never felt that at Chaney, so like it never even occurred to me that was a thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a trap to get into, and to create that divide and that dissension within the coaching staff.
No question. There's no question. Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important that one of your main guys, not your support guys, but your main guys, are coaching both sides of the ball.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because it's on you too.
Yeah.
Last thing. And I just asked this because this is one of the things that I enjoy. Like when you interview, do you ever have any interviews that went bad, or things where you're like, this isn't going to work out, or no names, but it's.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had a guy come in and say. Well, I'll run the offense. And I said, stop. No, I said that. He said, I'll run the wishbone. And I said, well, it's a big wish, but it isn't going to happen here. I said, I said, no, I said, I'll run the offense. I said, you can certainly assist and coordinate under my guidance, but we're going to run what I prescribe. And that was the end of the interview.
You didn't hire him?
No.
I think that's one of the things that over the years, interviews, they could be extremely great, or you could get some great stories coming out of it.
Yeah, I've been through a few myself, and I think the interviews that I had with various members were very painless. I mean, for the most part.
You doing the interviewing or you?
Both.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Anything you want to say to? You know what? I did have one others. So I just looked at my notes. So many players, former players, want to stay and still be part of the program. And I guess I asked this from a personal because I went through it. How did you integrate non-Chaney guys into the program? So when you would hire somebody like myself, somebody like Matt G, or, and I'm just use those names because I'm close with him, or anyone that was a non-Chaney guy, how did you integrate them into the Chaney way?
Well, I think for realistically, it probably came like in your case on Pope's recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
That's not saying Pope recommended.
I got you right.
People,
Yeah.
But he happened to know you, and
I was coaching baseball with him. Yeah.
correct, and and he came to me about you wanting to come aboard, and that was good enough for me. I mean, if you think he's ready or he could step into this particular position, then yeah, I believe in you enough, and I don't know that it's never not worked out as a result of that.
Yeah.
Whether it was Pope or somebody else on the staff, but. In your case, I think that there was no convincing once you were on board. I mean, I think you became a Chaney guy when you worked for Pope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now were there guys that came in that I'm trying to think of particulars, but that weren't Chaney people that like a guy like Matt Granary. I think through osmosis, just being involved in the program turns them into Chaney guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not saying that, well, now I'm a Chaney guy, I'm no longer an Ursuline guy,
No, I think
That's just believing in what we're doing.
yeah, I think it's the relationship.
Yeah.
Right, and then it's acknowledging the history and the tradition, right? But it's first and foremost buying into that relationship of, what, I respect and Pope's a mentor, and Matt Giambattista was coaching there, and so they, I want to take that transition, and then I get to know you and want to, I get to know Mick. I'm taking classes, so it's all those things of the relationship and believing in it.
Yeah, and I can't speak to any other program or any other staff, but I can say this. I could say this with an absolute clear conscience. Anyone that I've ever asked, whether it was you, whether it was Paul Lamongi, whether it was Mike Popio, whether it was Alan Mikovich, Bill Miller, Dan Cipriano, but anyone that I've asked, and maybe I was selective in who I asked, but anyone that I've asked and said, how is it, is there anything better as far as the relationship?
Mm-hmm.
And invariably, I have never had anyone say, well, I think it's a little better in Omaha, or it's a little better when I was at Struthers or Salem or whatever. I think it's the relationships that were established, and I'm certainly proud of the program that we built, but I'm every bit as proud of the relationships that were built.
It's a good place to end it.